Hello, friends. Spencer Love here with another interview coming your way from my apartment into your ears. And my guest this week is someone I am so excited to have on. I know I say it often, but I am very lucky to speak to a number of people that I've wanted to interview for years. And that's the case again today. LuFisto joining me on the show. I use the word legend sparingly, but a Canadian wrestling legend in this podcaster's humble opinion. It's so cool to have you on here. Thank you so much for taking the time. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm good. From live from my apartment too.
As we all are, man. But again, it's great to have you on here. It's kind of nice that you sort of know everybody's in their apartment right now, because at the very least they read your emails when you send them out. But thank you once again. Oddly enough, the only time I've ever had the opportunity to watch you wrestle live was about a year ago now. We're recording this in September. But you were at the Summit last year, which was one of the coolest events I've ever had the opportunity to get out and see. The first opportunity that I've had to go out to watch an all-female show. So maybe give me your thoughts on the show itself. And then I wanted to ask you just sort of the differences that you see between working in all-female promotions versus working sort of a traditional all-gender wrestling show.
I'm going to start with the second part of your question. The big difference
Cool.
is that the fans are so committed when it comes to women's wrestling fans. Like usually when they love women's wrestling, sometimes they'll just love women's wrestling. They don't even watch male wrestling. They study women's wrestling. They're big fans. Most of them are collectors. They'll collect all the DVDs, all the pictures. They're really, really dedicated. If I could make a comparison, like to compare two things that I know, Deathmatch fans and women's wrestling match are really, they're so passionate about it. These are two things that you either really, really love or you really, really hate. But when you do love it, it's huge. And it's been so similar when it comes to both of them. So that would be the main difference. I'm not saying the ones that watch everything are not passionate, but there's that little edge more that they will go all the way.
The more into the niche you get, it seems like the more passionate you get with everything, whether you're like an NHL versus like an AJHL hockey fan. It seems the deeper you get, the bigger your heart gets for it, right?
Yeah, and you will defend it, and you'll stand up for it if somebody's talking crap about it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that's really, really nice about women wrestling super fans.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the Summit, it was really cool to have three promotions coming together: Femme Fatale, Shimmer, and Rise, and on Canadian soil. There's a lot of women. They will come to wrestle for Femme Fatale, which is mostly now in Ottawa because they use the C4 Wrestling venue.
Yeah.
But it's nice for all the women's wrestling fans that they see people coming from from Ohio, from Sacramento, from Las Vegas, all under one roof. And the thing that happened at this show, and I was not expecting, I was like, and it's me being kind of negative Nancy, I guess. I was like, oh, they're tired of me, Toronto. They've seen me before. They won't be really excited or whatever. And I don't know why I thought that, because honestly, Toronto is one of the places that give me so much love, and that's since the beginning. Maybe it's because I got rid of the Ontario Commission. But I have so much love from the fans in Ontario in general. So I'm in this match with Leader Melissa and Priscilla Kelly and Allison Kay, and I'm like, they're big stars. Everybody knows them, on TV and stuff. So I was like, it's gonna be cool, but they're like, oh, you're coming out at the end. I'm like, no, I should not. You have the NWA Women's Champion. She should be the main thing. And Melissa was champion and everything. I was like, oh, what a terrible idea. What a terrible idea. And it's like, I'm going to go out and whatever.
Yeah.
But as soon as I crossed, the curtain, It was so loud. I
It's
felt the
nuts.
building was shaking,
Yeah.
and I have to stop. If you watch the video of the match, I get out and I have to stop to kind of realize, wow, what the hell is going on? Like the
Yeah.
reaction was out of this world, and like I felt like I was at Madison Square Garden. And I've never been there.
Well, there's so few like isolated clips from the summit that are out there, which is such a huge benefit because like obviously you get to watch a ton of the full matches, but like one of the only isolated clips that you can find is your entrance. And same sort of thing is like I just bought a puppy a few months ago, and every time I played it when I was sort of like, okay, I need to hear this again. It scared the shit out of them because, like you said, like everybody just loved you, and that has to be so cool for you. Not only to get that, not only to be part of an all-women show, but like especially like you say, when in your early days of your career, like you were quite literally the only woman on the card for the most part.
Pretty much. It still happens sometimes. But yeah, and not only did the reaction was so loud, but they all stood up.
Yeah.
Like I had a standing ovation just opening up the curtains. That's like, whoa. And
Like Kobashi when he was wrestling Joe.
I know. And that happened to me. It's funny, I was talking to actually no, I was posting about stories on my Patreon,
Hmm.
and I was talking about same thing happened to me when I wrestled at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla once. And
Yeah.
I'm going there and I'm against Candice LeRae and I'm like, man, they're not gonna know me, California, West or whatever. I don't know if I was still no, I was not the CCW Ironman champion, but they knew about it. And the
Hmm.
same thing happened. Like I opened the curtains thinking nobody will know me. It's like, girl from the other side of the country, up north. And they all stand up and I have a standing ovation right from the start. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. I'm supposed to be the heel. I was like, I'm happy, but that's not good.
Call it in the ring. Call it in the ring, man.
Oh
That's
my
so cool to
God,
hear. And one of the things that I sort of noticed when I was watching you in that match specifically was everybody you wrestled, like very different styles between Priscilla and Melissa and Allison Kay, but man, like you made them look like $1 million. And is that something you take like a lot of pride in yourself? Is that something that like it's a weird way to put it, but I've never been in the ring myself. Is that something that you can like really consciously work on, or how did that sort of come about to be a point of pride for you?
There's a lot of wrestlers that are really good to go out there and do their thing and look great. But
Hmm.
there's a few you can call journeyman, journeywoman, which are gonna go in there with anybody,
Hmm.
any level of experience, and they'll be able to get the best match out of this person. And it's really something I've always took great pride in doing when
Hmm.
whoever's standing in front of me, whether it's somebody who's been wrestling for 2 years, it's their second match, or somebody with years and years of experience, I always want to make sure they do look like $1 million because if they look good and I look good, then the match itself is more interesting. Two is I prefer the that kind of fighting spirit and going back and forth to get the fans like really into the match. I don't
Yeah.
want them to go like, oh, it's one-sided, it's kind of boring. I want
Someone's
them to
getting
get
their ass
excited.
kicked.
I want to create that roller coaster of emotions. It's
Yeah.
always been really important for me. So I've always worked in a way where I ask, okay, what do you do good? What are you not comfortable with? And then you work with the strength and weaknesses of your opponents and you do the same with yours.
Yeah.
You elevate what you're good at and you try to hide what you're not good at.
Yeah.
I used to be doing like a lot of high flying. I don't anymore because I feel I look way better in with my brawling style. I'm somebody who's really intense, and it's something that you see in women's wrestling, but to the point where you're like, the intensity is so close to sheer violence that you're like kind of not knowing where's the line. And I
Yeah.
like to play with that. And it's one of the things that always happens when I wrestle with somebody new. And Priscilla Kelly was one of them when we had a one-on-one. She's like,
Hmm.
oh, I thought you were going to kill me, but I didn't feel a thing. So, like, that's the idea.
Well,
But yeah,
that's great to
I,
hear,
I,
man.
I do take great pride in I just want to have the best match out there.
Yeah.
And it's something some veterans told me that's like you kind of it, it's not too good to do that because sometimes the other person's going to look better than you do, and it kind of um not that it downplays your role, but people don't usually understand how it works, like, because you'll have the veteran that's in the match who's going to set up the match, think about everything, place everything accordingly so the story
Mm.
in the match is perfect. But the other person's going to look so good that they're going to say, wow, she did a great job. And then the other one's like, well, I did everything else, but I'm still here. But it's the beauty of wrestling. If you make them believe that, um, you know, they were like so into the match, then I love being in ring general, definitely. And yeah, like I said, I always take good pride in making my opponent look great and make sure that the fans go home and say, wow, that was a hell of a match. Not, oh, she was great or she was great. That match was so good. They usually don't even remember who won. That match was good from bell to bell.
Is that a bit of a culture, I guess, that you had to change for yourself? Because I know you've mentioned in the past, you know, even when it came to your first match, like someone's literally throwing water on your gear before you enter the ring. You have to change the entire thing on the fly. So it seems like that's a bit contradictory to the sort of way that you were brought up in professional wrestling.
Yeah, and I would say it's probably one of the main reasons why I'm so protective of who I wrestle and the younger girls, especially because when I started, I feel like I didn't have that wrestling mom. I didn't have that protection. I didn't have that somebody I could go to and ask for advice. And I learn a lot by making mistakes. And I'm trying to avoid that as much as I can for people who are starting or I'm trying to give them what I feel was really lacking in my career.
Okay.
I really wish I had that person who would like, you can't say that because you can't do that because, and then explain. Usually you make the mistakes and then they call you a piece of shit and you're like, what did I do wrong? Please
I didn't mean
explain.
to.
I don't know. So please
Yeah.
explain so I can learn and get better. And um, yeah, it was a lot of trials and errors when it comes to my career. And then, by learning on the fly and becoming older and becoming smarter, then you kind of get it. But I feel it took a lot longer for me than somebody today because there's so many resources now that they can go to and ask for
Hmm.
advice. And there's great schools everywhere. Um, so yeah, definitely something that I wish I had. And that's why I think I'm really focused on making sure that they do have those tools that I feel I was lacking.
Yeah. Did you find that started to change at a point? Like in my opinion, you know, you bring it up yourself, even that there's a lot of great schools out there. The culture has sort of shifted
Mhm.
away from that. Was there a point that you found that it like had a okay, now is when we sort of see the schism and everything, or has it just been more of a gradual process?
It's a gradual process. I think
Hmm.
um, with people starting to kind of wanting to protect the new generation so they don't leave instead of um, if you talk to older people like me, we were all like beat up to see how tough we were, if we were mentally strong enough to deal with everything in wrestling. And I mean, that was the way it was, and it's fine. It's a lot of there's a school that's they still go and teach that way, like to make
Yeah.
you strong and see if you can take it, the physical abuse, the mental abuse, the everything.
Hmm.
It makes you a stronger person, but I know a lot of people quit that could have been so good because they could
Yeah.
not take this way of teaching. Now I feel it's more with the years, it went from let's see how tough you are to like a more of a teaching process, like you would learn jujitsu or karate, and like really taking the student and treating them as a student and teach them and explain what's wrong and
Okay.
correct what's wrong. And I feel it really went from, get beat up real bad and see if you're tough enough for this to a teaching process.
Yeah.
And so, but it went like really slowly. And you saw that appearing with people giving more seminars, school opening up, more women getting into the business. So that way you had to deal with men and women working together,
Yeah.
learning together. So it was different. I was the only girl in the school. I was the only girl, like you said, like on the card usually.
Yeah.
And when I was doing intergender wrestling, it was because I had no other girls and I really wanted to be a wrestler. But
Mm-hmm.
with the wrestling community back then, it was seen like, oh, she's hard to deal with. She has a bad attitude. She shouldn't be asking to work the guys. You can't do that. Like they didn't see intergender wrestling after we see it today. Today, it's more like two athletes working together, more like two stuntmen working
Yeah.
together. But back then it was something like bad. Like
Huh.
people, like some people thought like I just had a big head for wanting to wrestle the guys, and I'm like, well, there's no other girls. What do you want me to do?
It's wrestle
Like
the guys
I
or
need
nothing.
opponents.
Yeah.
And to get better in wrestling, the best way to get better is to wrestle with people who are better than you. So that
Yeah.
way you learn on the fly and you're in the ring and you see what they do and you just learn every single match you do. I still feel that I still have things to learn because every match is different, every opponent's different, they
Mm-hmm.
come from a different background. You're always going to learn. And once you think you know everything, maybe it's time to quit. So I always feel like there's something more I can do. And like for the longest time I couldn't do like best of DVDs because I would always find that one thing's like, oh, that sucked. I can't release that. And then people are like, oh no, that match was great. I'm like, oh yeah, but I didn't pin her right, or this shot was not good.
Just
And
insert like a tape glitch or something like that there.
yeah, well, in the days of VHS, it was possible, but no, people are, yeah, young kids are like, what is VHS? Like, ooh, you don't want to know.
So I mentioned I work for that hockey team. We ran into a kid who is younger than the team I work for, admittedly, but he was talking to his friend and he mentioned something silly about like what the save icon is on a computer. And like, oh man, we're at the point where like people don't understand what that means. Like we're all old. Don't get me wrong on that.
Well, I always say we're not old, we're experienced.
I like that. I'm going to take that from you. I wanted to ask then, because it sounds like it's an odd way to put it, but like, did you get any heat for going up against the OAC when you did for the right to fight against men? Because you would sort of think by today's standards, people would really support that, get behind it. But it sounds like that was a bit of the opposite case for you.
I think if I were to be doing that today, people would see it as maybe a good thing. But I feel back then, um, like I was told often that, oh, you have balls because nobody else had, the balls to actually take on them because
Yeah.
they were charging money for licenses and they were not providing a doctor and it was not giving the promotion or wrestlers anything really useful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not like when I was living in Pennsylvania, there was a commission, but there was a doctor on the premises if something would happen, and they would make sure you
Mm-hmm.
get to the hospital. And there was like the commission was actually useful.
Yeah.
It was a way to protect the wrestlers, and you have to pay for the doctor and the license for the show. But wrestlers themselves in Pennsylvania don't need like a paper that. It was $75 a year in Ontario, but if
Yeah.
let's say you would get your paper in October, it was good till January, and then you have to
Oh.
pay again for the whole year. So I feel a lot of people, like a lot of guys, were happy that I did the work, but I think in a way it gave me the reputation that I was like, oh, she's going to create problem.
Mm-hmm.
When my goal was to actually help the wrestling community as a whole, because women wrestlers could wrestle the guys in training, but could not in a show. But in Toronto, they're filming movies like Catwoman, where a stunt woman is fighting with a stunt man. I'm like, okay, that doesn't work. Like, it
Sounds kind of
doesn't make
bass
sense.
backwards.
It's like I'm trained to do this. It's not domestic violence. I
Yeah.
want to be here. too many people, and it still happens once in a while today, they will say, oh, intergender wrestling promotes domestic violence. No, somebody who's a victim of domestic violence doesn't want to be, doesn't choose to be. It's something that should not be happening. But if somebody trains and gets in the gym and gets in the ring, and you want to fight the best opponents you have, if the best opponent is a man, it is your choice to go against and go toe to toe. You're trained to do that. It's a personal choice, and as a woman, you should be able to choose. And that was the main thing. I could not wrestle who I wanted because of my gender. I lost tons of bookings because there was no women back then. So yeah, it took me 3.5 years, almost 4 years to actually, my main thing was to remove the law that stated that men and women cannot be in the ring. But when the whole, I don't know, the committee or the court or whatever started to look into it, they're like, nah, and everything, like the wrestling as a whole was removed from the commission.
I was going to say, there's way more useless stuff in here than we thought.
We're paying for that.
You mentioned before in interviews that you sort of got into not only intergender, but like hardcore wrestling, deathmatch wrestling as, again, opportunities to provide them for more women in professional wrestling. Do you think if you were to break in today, you would still be getting into that? Because there are, at least on the surface, I should say, there are those opportunities for a lot of women today.
I don't know if I would do it because I enjoy wrestling, just the wrestling part so much, and I feel a lot more fulfilled having a great wrestling match than, you know, using weapons and stuff. But I mean, I would probably do it once in a while because to push my own limits, to prove that I can do it, to provide something else, or I mean, hardcore matches or stipulation matches they're a great thing when they're part of a feud. It's great that you build that feud, and then the last match, there's that big blow-up match where you're using weapons, or a cage match, or however it was built. It tells a nice story, and that's like the pinnacle of everything. I still love to do that, and I still do like brawling and, you know, kind of a no rules match. I'll use the tables, the chairs, the guardrails, or destroying walls too. I do that.
But I won't do hardcore. Like, oh yeah, that's not.
But like back then, it was like everybody was telling me, "You're a girl. You don't need to do this," and it will give you all the scars. And it was like people were like talking to me like it was like, ugh. And it made me mad because I was like, again, it's the same thing that happened with the commission. You're telling me not to do something because I'm a woman. And it just frustrated me. I'm like, I was born a woman. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But there's no way in hell you're going to tell me I can't do something because I wasn't born without I don't know. Can we say this word?
We've got the explicit rating on iTunes. We're good to go.
But yeah, it was really frustrating. Now, as today, if because there's some girls still doing hardcore. Hallie Cat comes to mind, but now it's her choice, and people think it's cool that she's involved. And back then, it was not cool. It became cool when they like start seeing. It was like, oh, she can do it. This girl can do it. Or I'm thinking Mickey Knuckles, she can do it. But today, at least, it's like if a girl says, "Hey, I feel like doing a death match," then go. And that's the great thing. You can choose who you're gonna wrestle, where you're gonna wrestle, and what type of match.
Yeah. I'm going to make you toot your own horn here, so I apologize for that. But how cool is it for you that like you have made such a tangible impact on the business with stuff like that? Because again, and I say it all as a surface fan, I'm not anybody on the inside by any means, but it does seem like the opportunities that have come about, a large part of that is due to what you've done in the past.
I don't know exactly how to, like I've worked really hard for women, and I still do when I see something that's that's bad for women wrestling, I'm gonna stand up. I'm still the one who's gonna say, hey, like it happened with CZW,
Yeah.
and it's like, hey guys, like we didn't sign up for this, so I've waited, but after 2 months of just they kept going and using like names that we did not agree on and stuff. I was like, despite all my love for CZW and everything, I was like, it's like it felt wrong for me not to say anything because there were some
Yeah.
girls who didn't know about it. It's like, hey, did you know that's what they do? Because if you
Hmm.
go back and you work there, that might happen to you. So I just, it's again, it might people might think that it's like, oh, she's hard to deal with or she creates problem. No, she's looking for solutions so women wrestlers can have a great future and can have a good a career free of drama. I mean, wrestling,
Yeah.
there's drama as it is. It's entertainment. I mean, sports in general. It is life. Life has
Yeah.
drama. But I mean, if I can help avoid some of the stuff that you don't have to deal with, then
Hmm.
I'm gonna stand up and fight for it. It comes from a good place, and when I do it, like it's always like when I did the CZW video, I think like it took me like 10 or 20 takes because I was like, and then I was like, I have to do this. I have to do this, but I will always do what I think is right for the collectivity and everyone involved.
Hmm. With CZW specifically, like, has it soured you on the promotion as a whole just because of that? Because you have done some pretty great stuff as far as they go, right?
The way I see it is I separate in two. There's John Zandig CCW and there's the DJ Hyde CCW,
Hmm.
which I didn't wrestle. Like I think I wrestled twice or three times for DJ, and with Zandig, that's where everything happened for me. Where I was in the best of the best, the Cage of Death. Had great matches with Sammy Callahan and B-Boy and feud with Nick Gage. And so I try really to separate both because where I was born and when I always give credit is to John Zandig and that CCW with his partner Maven and all the guys that were there. And I've always the thing that's like really disappointing is I've always had like a great relationship with DJ Hyde. I even
Hmm.
considered him as a friend. But for him to make that decision without checking, or something where you're like, you what's more disappointing is that when WSU started, we were told this is going to be the shimmer of the East Coast, and we're going to treat it like professional wrestling. And Blake Thomas, who was the booker then, he worked so hard. He wanted this to be
Hmm.
like serious. The women look good and have great fight and have the best matches you could have together.
Yeah.
And for them to do that, it's like destroying everything you told us you promised us. So
Yeah.
it was like, so that's where I'm like, but no, I have my CCW Hall of Fame plaque on my wall. I always give credit to CCW for everything they gave me, but I really try to separate. There's the DJ era and there's the John Zandig era. John Zandig made me, and I'm
Hmm.
forever grateful, and I love him forever for that. And I mean, DJ, I'm sure one day we'll be able to sit down and talk about it. But
Hmm.
when I try to talk to whoever online that was answering me, I don't even know if it's him or someone else.
Hmm.
And they came up with all kinds of excuse and stuff. And it's like, you guys saw me from the very beginning struggling and like few of the guys laughing at me because I was the girl trying to be as tough
Yeah.
as you guys. And you saw the evolution and you end up doing this. It's like not you're aware of how hard it's been. So
In
for
the
you to
worst
do that,
possible way, in the worst possible way, it came full circle.
yeah. So it's like, I hope one day we can sit down and kind of figure it out, and I can actually explain to him, how I feel, and he can tell me how he feels too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really shitty situation.
Absolutely. And that's why we're going to move past it and we can't end an interview on a shitty situation. What did you think of Drag Race Canada?
I didn't watch it because I
What?
couldn't find it. No, I don't have cable.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
I always try to find stuff online, and this was like, oh my god, I can't watch it. And I know the Queen from Montreal like went like almost the end. I'm
Yeah.
like, and I couldn't find it. It's like, but
When
yeah,
we're off this, I'll give
anybody
you
has
my.
to send me
I was
links.
just gonna say, when we're off this, I'll send you my Crave password for the next couple of days. It
You're
is
wonderful.
so good. Okay, then
I'm
I.
such a, yeah, I love drag queens so
Okay, well, I
much.
was gonna say then we have to
Uh,
pivot. Who's your favorite drag queen?
oh, that's tough. I love Bianca Del Rio.
Good
I
call.
love,
Great call.
I love Sasha Velour. From the last like All Star, Shea Coulee.
Oh
She's
yes.
gorgeous.
See, my girlfriend only got me into Drag Race 4 or 5 years ago, so I'm still doing a lot of catch up. So that was like my first Shea Coulee experience. Loved it, man. I've got to give my vote to Evie Oddly. Killer.
Yeah. Oh, she's.
Killer, man. Like
I
weird in
like
all
I
the
like
right
Vanessa
ways.
Vanjie too. Miss Vanjie. Miss Vanjie.
You, my girlfriend, is going to be a huge fan of yours as far as that goes, man. I have to plead the fifth as far as Vanjie Love goes, but you've got a fan of my girlfriend, man. LuFisto, thank you so much, man. This has been an absolute blast getting the opportunity to get to chat with you. It really, really means a lot that you took the time. As I mentioned off the bat, I want to leave the last part of the show for you to plug wherever people can find you online, on professional wrestling platforms, wherever it may be. The floor is yours, friend.
Well, right now there's no wrestling due to COVID, so hopefully you'll see me back in the ring really soon. But right now you can see a lot of stuff from my website, LuFisto.com. From there, you have access to my Instagram, Wounded at LuFisto. It's at LuFisto on Twitter, patreon.com/LuFisto. There's matches that I put there. There's tons of like pictures and stories and no nudes. I'm sorry. No, I want to be specific. It's wrestling related stuff, music, coffee, lots of cat stuff. um, but yeah, I mean, if you can't remember all this, just go on lufisto.com. It's pretty complete. All the links are there, and you can access my YouTube channel. I put matches there once in a while and stuff, so you can at least see me like somewhat live from OnlyFans.
Well, I highly suggest doing so, man, because any opportunity I've had to watch you wrestle, whether it was at the summit, whether it's online, in any one of the random matches I've had the chance to do, it's always a pleasure. You're a personal favorite of mine. You're a Canadian wrestling legend. I said it off the bat, and I'll say it again. Thank you once again. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Anytime at all. And thank you guys for tuning in on this interview on Love Wrestling. I rebranded and I always forget that. On Love Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in for another interview with Spencer Love. Stay tuned for the next one, friends.